You're in a toy store. Your toddler spots something on the shelf, reaches for it, and you say no. 3 seconds later, they're on the floor, screaming, and every person in the aisle is looking at you. You know the toy is not the point, but in that moment, nothing you do seems to help, and everything you try either makes it worse or makes you feel like you're doing this completely wrong. You're not doing it wrong. You just don't have the biological context for what is actually happening inside your child's brain during a tantrum. Once you have that context, the right response becomes obvious, and the wrong responses become just as obvious. In this video, you'll learn what actually causes tantrums, the specific responses that make them worse, and a step-by-step framework for getting through them without escalating, without giving in, and without damaging the relationship in the process. If this channel is new to you, subscribe. We publish new videos every week on infant and toddler development and behavior, based on current scientific evidence. Number 1, what a tantrum actually is. A tantrum is not manipulation. It is not a power play. It is not a sign that your child is spoiled, defiant, or badly raised. A tantrum is a neurological event, a full-body stress response triggered when the emotional brain is overwhelmed and the regulatory systems that would normally contain that overwhelm are not yet developed enough to do their job. Here is the biology. The brain has 2 systems relevant to understanding tantrums. The first is the limbic system, the emotional brain, sometimes called the downstairs brain, which generates emotional responses including fear, frustration, excitement, and rage. It operates quickly, automatically, and without language. The second is the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, sometimes called the upstairs brain, which is responsible for impulse control, emotional regulation, logical reasoning, and the ability to pause before acting on an impulse. In adults, these 2 systems communicate well enough that the prefrontal cortex can usually modulate the limbic system's output. In toddlers, the prefrontal cortex is profoundly immature. It will not reach full development until the mid-20s. In a 2-year-old, it is barely online. When the limbic system fires a strong emotional response, frustration, disappointment, fear, overstimulation, the prefrontal cortex does not have the capacity to regulate it. The emotional response runs unchecked. That is a tantrum. This means that asking a child in the middle of a tantrum to calm down, listen to reason, or understand consequences is asking the prefrontal cortex to do its job while it is effectively offline. The request is biologically impossible, not difficult, impossible. What to do? Revise your expectation of what the tantrum is. It is not a behavior to be stopped. It is a neurological state to be waited out, with the right conditions around it. Number 2, what makes tantrums more frequent? Tantrums are developmentally normal from approximately 18 months through age 4. Their frequency and intensity are not fixed. They are directly shaped by environmental and physiological conditions that parents can influence. The 3 most consistent predictors of tantrum frequency are hunger, fatigue, and overstimulation. These are not personality factors or parenting failures. They are physiological states that reduce the already limited capacity of the toddler's regulatory system. A tired, hungry, or overstimulated child has even less prefrontal capacity available than baseline DAO, meaning the threshold for a limbic system overwhelm is significantly lower. Research on toddler behavior consistently shows that the majority of intense tantrums cluster around the same windows: late morning before lunch, late afternoon before dinner, and the hour before bedtime. These are the windows when hunger and fatigue are most likely to be peaking simultaneously. Transitions are a second major trigger. Moving from one activity to another, especially moving away from a preferred activity, requires the child to inhibit their current engagement, shift their attention, and adapt to a new context. Each of these is a prefrontal cortex function. Under conditions of fatigue or hunger, the capacity for smooth transitions drops sharply. Unmet autonomy needs are the third major trigger. Between 18 months and 3 years, children are in a developmental period defined by the emergence of a sense of self and a strong drive toward independence. The word no is not defiance. It is the developmental expression of a child who has discovered they have preferences and is testing whether those preferences have any power. When adult control overrides this drive consistently and without acknowledgement, the frustration that results is genuine and intense. What to do? Protect sleep, protect mealtimes, build transition warnings into your routine. A 5-minute warning before ending an activity costs nothing and reduces resistance significantly. And wherever possible, offer controlled choices rather than directives. Do you want to put on your shoes first or your jacket first? Produces far less resistance than put on your shoes. Number 3. What not to do during a tantrum. The instinctive responses to a tantrum are almost all counterproductive. Not because parents are doing anything unreasonable, but because the instinctive responses are designed to work on a regulated brain, and a tantrum is by definition an unregulated one. Do not try to reason with the child during the tantrum, explaining why the cracker is still edible, why the rule is fair, or why their reaction is disproportionate. Requires the child to process language, follow logic, and regulate their emotional state simultaneously. None of these are available when the limbic system is in full activation. Reasoning during a tantrum does not shorten the tantrum, it extends it, because the adult talking is additional stimulation entering an already overwhelmed system. Do not match the child's emotional intensity. Raising your voice, expressing frustration visibly, or showing anger in response to a tantrum adds emotional input to a system that is already overwhelmed by emotional input. The nervous system of a young child is exquisitely sensitive to the emotional state of caregivers. A dysregulated adult does not regulate a dysregulated child, it dysregulates them further. Do not give in to end the tantrum. Giving a child what they are tantruming about, returning the broken cracker, reversing the limit, providing the thing that was denied, does end that specific tantrum. It also teaches the child that tantruming is an effective strategy for getting what they want, which increases the frequency and intensity of future tantrums. This is operant conditioning operating in exactly the wrong direction. Do not use punishment during the tantrum. Timeouts, consequences, and removal of privileges require the child to process cause and effect, a prefrontal function. Applied while the child is neurologically offline, they do not teach anything. They add distress to distress. Do not ignore the child completely. Leaving the room or withdrawing all attention during a tantrum is different from staying calm and non-reactive. Complete withdrawal can activate the child's attachment system on top of the emotional overwhelm already present, which escalates rather than resolves the state. Number 4. What to do during a tantrum. The effective response to a tantrum has 3 components: safety, regulated presence, and waiting. Safety first. If the child is in a location where they could hurt themselves, near furniture with sharp edges, near stairs, in a public space with traffic, move them to a safe location calmly and without making the movement a power struggle. Do not restrain unless there is genuine physical danger. Regulated presence. Second, stay near the child, stay calm, do not talk much. The less language input the better during peak dysregulation. Your physical presence communicates safety. Your calm nervous system is a co-regulatory input for the child's dysregulated one. This is not a metaphor. Research on co-regulation shows that a calm caregiver's physiological state, communicated through voice tone, facial expression, and proximity, directly influences the child's stress hormone levels during emotional overwhelm. A single brief acknowledgement of the emotion is more useful than repeated attempts at conversation. You're really frustrated. I'm here. Then stop talking. Do not repeat it. Do not elaborate. Let the nervous system do what it needs to do. Waiting third. Tantrums have a natural arc. They peak and they end. The duration of the peak phase, the most intense part, is typically 2 to 5 minutes for most toddlers in most situations. After the peak, the child begins to come back online. Breathing slows, muscle tension reduces, the crying shifts from sharp and intense to softer and more tired. This recovery phase is when connection becomes possible. Move closer. Offer physical contact if the child is receptive. Some children want to be held immediately after a tantrum, others need a few minutes of space first. Follow the child's lead. Once the child is calm and regulated, a very brief, simple acknowledgement of what happened is appropriate. Not a lecture, not a consequence. One sentence. That was really hard. You're okay now. Number 5. After the tantrum, what actually teaches? The tantrum itself is not the teaching moment. The teaching moment is what happens after. Young children do not learn emotional regulation by being punished for dysregulation. They learn it by repeatedly experiencing the cycle of dysregulation and return to regulation and over time, by internalizing the co-regulatory strategies that caregivers model during that cycle. Every time you stay calm during your child's tantrum, you are modeling the regulatory capacity you want them to develop. Every time the tantrum ends and the child returns to connection with you without the relationship being damaged, they learn that strong emotions are survivable, that losing control does not mean losing you. This is the long game of tantrum management, not eliminating tantrums, which is not possible during this developmental period, but building the neural infrastructure of emotional regulation through repeated, consistent co-regulation experiences. As the prefrontal cortex develops through ages 3, 4, and 5, children begin to internalize these strategies. They start to use language to express frustration instead of acting it out physically. They begin to tolerate disappointment for longer before reaching the overwhelm threshold. They develop the capacity to accept a no without a full neurological crisis. This development does not happen faster when the adult responds to tantrums with more intensity, more punishment, or more giving in. It happens on a biological timeline that is supported by consistent, regulated caregiving and disrupted by chronic stress, inconsistency, and emotional escalation from caregivers. What to do? After a tantrum ends and the child is calm, reconnect first. Then, if the situation that triggered the tantrum involved a limit that needs to hold, a rule, a boundary, a consequence, restate it once, briefly, without emotion. The answer is still no, is sufficient. Then move on. Do not revisit the tantrum itself with the child unless they bring it up. Young children do not benefit from post-event processing the way adults do. They benefit from returning to normal as quickly as possible. Tantrums are not a parenting problem. They are a developmental phase driven by a brain that has more emotional capacity than regulatory capacity. That imbalance resolves not because of what you do to the tantrum, but because of what you do around it. Stay regulated, stay present, hold the limit, wait. The free guide in the description covers behavioral and developmental milestones across the full first year, including the social and emotional markers that predict how the toddler years will unfold. Download it and keep it close. The next video covers sleep regressions, what they are, when they happen, and how to get through them without losing the routine you've built. Watch it next.